basically applying mulch around the plants and finishing, applying those finishing touches is important. This is what our landscape looks like. And the house before we started basically had a walkway here, a sidewalk that went to the door. None of this was in there. So we've put in this walkway from the street and then also from their parking area. This area over here, we created basically a brick on sand parking area. So we got really thick bricks that allow for the weight of a car to go on them. And so they have like two strips. Before they were just kind of parking on their lawn. And it didn't look that good because it was allowing, where they parked, the lawn didn't look so great. So, and then it's covered by DG completely, so decomposed granite. And then this pathway is a decomposed granite pathway that goes over to this olive tree. And then along the side here are 3 Prunus carolinas. That's the plant that they really wanted. They'd seen it in Santa Rosa. They really liked it and they wanted that particular plant. It's about a 10-foot tall blooming shrub that's sort of very upright. And they're gonna go into some round planters. They really wanted to block the view on this side, and they also get some north winds. They said that really they like to sit out on their porch, which is they have a covered porch right here, and the north wind, they said, really is deterrent from that. So we tried to do something that would kind of help block that a little bit and also block the view of their not so great neighbors. So now the house is selling. They just found out like a couple of days ago, and so they're like, oh, maybe we got rid of our neighbors. So they may not be as concerned, but that was one of their concerns when we started. So that's what that looked like. Now I'm going to show you the kind of the final. I don't know if you can remember the beginning of what it looked like, but there was a bunch of Nandina that was up blocked. We couldn't even see this window. It was completely blocking that window. And then they had a giant euonymus shrub right here. And then they just had a walk that kind of went over in this area. So we've basically completely changed their yard. The only existing thing that's left is this rosemary that's right here, and they have some lavender that's over here. There's going to be 2 rows of the fescue on either side to kind of define their pathway, but the rest of this landscape is mostly planted. Here's where we put that sheet mulching in over there. That's where those planters with the Prunus carolina are going along over on this side here. So other considerations. One of the things with this, a lot of times we see folks with lawns, they water a little bit every day or every other day or something. And once plants get established, they really need to be watered maybe deeply, but maybe once a week, or in the really hot temperatures, maybe twice every week, but probably no more frequently than that. So if you're watering a little bit every day, you're encouraging shallow root systems. And in some cases, if you've planted those plants that are really low water users, they actually may kill them. So they can't take that much water. So you want to make sure that you're letting them kind of dry out between irrigations, or they may struggle. So do be conscious of that. The other thing is watering a few inches below whatever the current root system is will encourage deeper rooting. So, if you're putting on water, use a probe or something to see how deep that water's going after you've irrigated, and try to get it down below where your plants are. If you're planting new plantings especially, they may only have, if it's a 4-inch pot or something, it may only be this deep a root. Get the water to go down below that, so it kind of encourages those to root deeper and not more shallow. They'll be a lot more resilient in the summertime when things dry out quicker and it's hotter and stuff. So you could bury your drip line, but even if it's on the surface, you're just letting it run long enough that it's soaked into your soil. So make sure that that's happening. The other thing is that if you have poorly drained soil, so I have soil that is extremely poorly drained in that it's heavy clay soil. My only saving grace is it's pretty gravelly as well. So at least it drains some, but you may have to do some extra considerations for that, in that, especially with plants that need, if you're choosing really low water need plants, you may have to mound them a little bit or something so that the water will run off of them and not sit on them. I have killed, I don't know how many, I really like certain native plants, and I kill them fairly frequently because my soil is so wet in the wintertime that I lose sages, I've lost some flannel bush, some of the things are just finicky about. I lost 2 or 3 red buds, primarily because I put them in the wrong spots, and they just had too much water sitting on them during the winter time. So making sure that as you're kind of creating your new landscape, especially if you're choosing these plants that really need low water, that they have some sort of way of not sitting in water all winter, because that's usually when you see the problems. Some plants may not need to be irrigated after they've been established, or maybe only irrigate a few times. So for instance, I have an Afghan pine, which those Afghan pines are one of the trees that are very low water need tree. And I water it once or twice during the summer, and it looks wonderful the rest of the year. So it really doesn't need much water at all once it's established. And it's a big tree. It's probably 30 feet tall. So once you've gotten them established, it may just need a couple summer irrigations, and that's it. And then I really would encourage people to think about using a few native plant species in their yard. Native plants support a lot of our native insects, and then our native insects also support our native birds, so that it basically is one of those things that support the entire ecosystem. When we bring a lot of plants that are from foreign countries, or just even just different areas of the US, they aren't, a lot of times they don't support our native insects or native birds, just because they don't know what to do with that particular plant. So by having a few of those in your yard, you are supporting kind of just the overall ecosystem. And we have had just a massive die-off of insects in the last 30 years or so. It's catastrophic. And you may not like bugs, but bugs really support us. I mean, they're what really pollinate a lot of our food. And even if you don't like bugs, most people like birds, and that's what birds mostly feed on. So, making sure that you do support them is really important. So anyway, for that reason alone, I would encourage you. But there's also a lot of really nice plants that are low water users that are native plants. So, and they're well adapted to our area. And then the other thing that you may want to think about is creating, as we were talking about, is to create some sort of an infiltration basin. If you are putting in DG or other things, or you may have some runoff of your yard, capturing that in a spot, even from like the downspout of your house, creating, just some dry stream beds or other things, can allow for you to capture rainwater throughout the year that soaks into your soil and kind of fills up the soil, and it reduces the amount that you have to irrigate the rest of the year, because that kind of fills up your soil bank, so to speak, and it takes a while for plants to deplete that. So especially if you have deeper soils. If you have shallower soils, then that may not be as beneficial to you, because they're going to hit a whatever, bedrock or whatever and run off. But for those of us that have deeper soils, that can be really beneficial. A lot of times they're called rain gardens or other things, and they can add a lot of interest into your landscape. You can put them at the, create just sort of like a little bit of a swale, as from your yard to the street, and that will capture any runoff that comes off your yard and keep it on your site as well, which is very beneficial for the environment, because you're not having anything you put on your yard going down into our storm drains, which end up in the creeks and rivers. So that can be also a good thing.
Before the sidewalk.
Before the sidewalk, right. So just creating a little bit of a swale or a dry stream bed, or whatever. It could even be one of the ones that I saw the other day that I thought, oh, that's a really clever idea, is they did the right on the border of their property, they basically did a border of rock. It was kind of larger rock. Sometimes this is, my sister said, well, then people could pick it up and throw it at your window. But if you live in that bad a neighborhood, maybe you need to consider moving. But anyway, they had some larger rocks. I was on a walk with my sister and we saw this in her neighborhood. But they had put that all along the edge of their property, like between the sidewalk and their property. And then they had all these like succulents and stuff that were growing into it. And so it looked, the way they had made it and the way the plants were growing, it sort of made it this kind of wavy edge of just the rock contrasting with the succulents was really attractive looking. And then they had a kind of a low water use landscape behind it that wasn't necessarily all succulents. It was a mix of things, but it made it look sort of like they had created a really nice border along the front. And they obviously had dug it out. So basically any water that was running off would capture in that kind of rock swale. But it wasn't an actual dip. It was level with their yard. And it was just a nice way of kind of creating a border from their sidewalk to their transitioning into the yard. So it doesn't always have to be it was level, but they dug it out. You could tell where they dug it out, right? But they filled it with kind of large rocks. So there's big, and I was looking at it pretty closely because I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And you could see where they didn't line it with anything. So it was obviously, their intention was to have it be somewhat of a swale. And it was really attractive looking, I thought. I do want to thank our different sponsors. We have, this project has been going, we have, for our landscape makeover project, it's taken us, we started in October, and we've had multiple sponsors kind of helping with that project. We will be having some further kind of short films on the whole process and going through that. So if you want to see some of that, part of that will be with KIXE, and but we'll have that available to you. So thank you very much for coming, braving the storm this morning. It was really pouring out there, and thank you.